Hi everyone, it's Jerry. Over a year ago, I played a game against the ChessNetwork Facebook page, and it was the second time I ran a game like this, and it was a vote style type of game where I would post a photo to the page, and then those who were playing against me would cast their vote by punching in a star and then writing in algebraic notation what they thought should be the next move played. It took about 3 months before it finished, and when that last photo was posted, one of the things that I did ask is if you would like to have your name included if I was to do a video on this to, let me know. And so some of the players who wanted to be included, I have listed here. So I'm just going to scroll through. Again, this started, I believe, July 20th, and July 20th, 2012, and it took about 3 months to finish. And these are some of the players who took part in this game. So let's have a look at it. We have the Chess Network Facebook page on the white end, and they started out with e4. That was the one that was voted for the most, and I kicked off with the caro-kann. After d4, d5, knight c3. At this point, I really did not want to go into a main line, and I just want to steer clear of this because it could just really go for like 17 moves or whatever. I mean, there's just a ton of theory on this, and I just didn't want to go in this type of a direction. So instead, I did something that's very awkward. You might as well just call it dubious. It's not something I would play in a serious game, but I thought, just kind of maybe mix it up a little bit. So I went with b5, and the idea here is if white captures, there's this in-between move b4, displacing this knight, and only then recapturing, let's say, on that d5 square. If the knight maybe goes to c4 or c5, maybe it could just be challenged right away. But we didn't have any of that. The reason why b5 is not good is because of how white can be responding, and it was the way that the Chess Network Facebook page played. They decided on a3, and now I'm not going to be getting in b4. Trying to be persistent with a5 is not even a threat because the rook is unprotected. And so when you just do a quick comparison of these two pawn moves, which of the two is more weakening? It's the b5 advance. I've advanced 2 squares. I'm leaving a couple holes. Not to say that these squares, c5 and a5, can be exploited, but what do I even do? It's like b5, okay, I can't even get in b4 because of a3. I've just made weaknesses, and it's just something to steer clear of. But in any event, it's something different, and the game followed up. I did capture on e4. There's not really anything better at that point, so white recaptures, and I just went with development right away. This is a structure. They did capture on f6, and I recaptured with e. This right here is a structure that I have quite a bit of experience with, and my idea here is just to play bishop f5 and maybe just back it up at one point. Basically get it outside of the eventual light square pawn structure, and then get this guy developed a little bit later. But I went instead with e takes f, capturing away from the center just so I could get a little bit more rapid development. Both my bishops can come out in one shot now, and I could quickly castle and maybe get this rook on the e file. One of the drawbacks with capturing away from the center is now we just have a 4-on-3 majority in favor of white on the queen side, and this is something that really causes me some serious problems in not too many moves from now, where this is just move 6. So we have a few very natural moves. Bishops coming out, knights coming out, both sides castle. I pin this knight. They throw a question to it. I maintain this pin, and now just a single move away from being fully developed is white, needing only to move the queen. So already I'm experiencing, unfortunately, some difficulties. It seems like I was really placing, I guess, a great weight, maybe too much of a weight, on this pin right here being uncomfortable for white. And many of my thoughts were centered around maybe seeing that white had to maybe go back to e2 to break that pin. but we had something much different. And one of the things that I was afraid of at this point, one of the things I wanted to do was play knight to d7. But what kept me away from that was this d5 response. And now this b5 pawn is really starting to show. If I ever take, then there's something like this. This is an isolated pawn. If he falls, then it's just a 3-on-1. This is something I really wanted to steer clear of. There's possibilities for, let's say, bishop c6, etc. So I wanted to avoid that. So before I developed my knight to d7, I played a move I played the move a6, and this just gets crunched like right away because of how white responds. They just played c4, opening up the position. My knight is still on its home square, and there's now possibilities for, let's say, a d5 move, or maybe a very cramping c5 move one day. I didn't want to have to deal with that sort of stuff, so I just captured, and I really could not appreciate the amount of pressure white would quickly place on this c6 pawn, which becomes incredibly vulnerable, and soon enough I end up having to give up a pawn in order to maintain this c6 pawn. So first and foremost, white just recaptures. Now I develop. Rook c1, logical enough. Okay, this pawn is coming under some heavy fire. White has an isolated pawn, but these two guys are isolated as well. And I can't, of these two pawns, if we do pawn versus pawn comparison on c6 and d5, this guy right here on d4 is much stronger. It has support. I can't eliminate. I can't exchange my c pawn for their d pawn. So this becomes a great issue. So knight b6, bishop d3. At this point, I already know that there's no way of saving this pawn, because the idea here is if I let's say play my queen to c7 to watch over this, not only might there be, let's say, bishop d5, but just even the idea of bishop back and queen c2 hitting at both h7, c6, and the bishop may very well reroute itself on this diagonal to pinpoint c6. Or instead of queen c7, maybe even just queen here. Actually forget about that because there's a pawn push. So I think however you slice it in this position, in short, there's not really a way to save this c pawn and a pawn. One of them has to fall, and I figured that it's better to let this a6 pawn fall. So I went about things in the following way. I thought to myself, okay, if I'm going to give up a pawn, I want to try and establish a knight on this d5 square. So that's what I went for. Knight b6, bishop d3, rook c8. I know I'm dropping a6, but again, not really seeing a way to defend it. The queen comes to either one of these to defend. Queen c2, a double attack against c6 as well as h7. So rook c8, the bishop grabs the pawn. I play rook c7. And now bishop e2, the move that I thought would have been played a little bit earlier, but certainly a much different situation. I'm now just down material. And this pin is broken. And okay, I have a knight on d5, and he sits here for quite some time. But that's that's all he does. He looks pretty, but unless I could stir some other stuff up, there's not really much to show for this knight. I try my best, but it's very, very difficult. So knight d2, the knight's looking to reroute to this c4 square, and the light square bishops come off. So I do have, this is a strong-looking knight. This bishop is bearing down against the king's side, but not so sure that it's really going to be enough. I back my rook up in order to meet the move that was played, knight c4, with bishop to b8. And now b4. These pawns, well, they don't start to get rolling, both of them, but really just saying with now this b4 move, you know what? This pawn is not going anywhere fast, and the pawn now at b4 is adding a support point for this knight to target c6. So what I do try with these next couple of queen moves is to induce some weaknesses against the white king. I'm successful in doing that. g3 is played, queen d7, and okay, well, the threat against h3 is just queen g4. Why not? Okay, offer a queen exchange, you're up material. I do well to avoid that queen exchange. I play f5, And I was starting to maybe feel like there might have been something, because I do maybe have potential for f4 to maybe mess with the white kingside position. But it doesn't play out so well. If I do f4 right here, there could always just be pawn takes. And okay, these pawns look very ugly, but they're also extras. And the queen defends h3. So I don't play f4. Instead, I get my rook on an open file. And white does similar. h6, providing some square for my king. And now we have the offer of a rook exchange. And I needed to stir something up. If I'm to try and get any type of counterplay, I can't just go with like rook takes rook and then bring the other rook over here. I need to keep some material on. I'm seeing that there's not really going to be a way to, let's say, maintain both rooks on the board. So I wanted to keep at least one pair of rooks on the board. Instead, I played rook e4 with the following continuation: rook takes, pawn takes, queen takes. They get a pawn, but so too do I. And it might even still look like there's potential. This queen very close to the white king, the bishop bearing down on g3, the queen putting pressure on g3. But white puts a great end to it right here. This bishop is just dead at this point. Knight e5, and this guy just has no hope of smashing down on that g3 square. So I'm feeling very uncomfortable at this point. Knight e5 is a very strong move, and not to mention c6 is now hit a second time, and my queen is having to just come back to play a defensive role. So a sad situation for me right now. Again, still down a pawn, and once again, white now with queen g4 is offering a queen exchange. So I'm really seeing at this point that the queen exchange is kind of just unavoidable, because just all the different possibilities that white has. If I can't go too far with my queen. If I'm to go to e8 to still watch over the rook on c8, well, keep in mind this pawn is pinned, and so bishop takes h6 is available. So I see that eventually, if white really wants to have the queens off the board, it's going to happen. But first I played f5, knowing that queen g6 would be played, and now we have this exchange, and I could play king f7. I wanted to displace this knight so that in this resulting endgame, when the queens are off the board, I wanted to have this f7 square available for my king so I could get towards the center with tempo. Notice that if I were to, let's say, just capture right now, okay, I don't have a fast track towards the center at this point. So anyhow, I played f5, queen g6, the queens come off. Again, this queen is just way too powerful on g6. I'm not really seeing what more I could do. She's hitting in all directions. Again, this bishop takes h6 is still a possibility. Pressure on c6 3 times, twice directly, a third indirectly. Something's got to give. The queens have to be exchanged, otherwise I'm going to drop another pawn. So the queens come off, king f7, knight e5 with check, and the knight has to go, otherwise, again, I'm dropping c6. So bishop for knight exchange, and look at this knight. He looks very pretty, but there's nothing more that I could really do. I'm seeing that if I go into a defensive mode right now, or excuse me, if I just try to do king improvement, this is not going to turn out well, because this pawn is pinned. There might be potential for b5, and I thought that really my best opportunity was to just try and get active in some way. And I see that these two pawns together are healthy. This guy has, for like 20 moves, already been just a great liability for me. So I figured, let's give this guy up and go after the a3 pawn. So that's what I decided on. Rook a8, the c pawn falls, but their a pawn falls, and I'm looking to maybe get behind this passed b pawn. My knight is now without a support point. So this is a weak link. It's a weak pawn. It is providing a support point for my knight, and now that it's been removed, my knight is subjected to some serious threats. And right here, it's already a resignable position. This is move 36, and I say that it's a resignable position because we have a bishop versus knight situation, and my knight just does not have a good support point. What is he going to do? I can't get to this square, and even if I was on that square, I'm not so sure how great it is. So I can't go here because of forks. The bishop is boxing him out. Playing here to defend just places my own knight in a pin, and I believe after the bishop, let's say, just sidesteps something. I forget what the move would have been right here. Maybe no, not right here. Actually, this is not a good choice because of rook check, and then knight takes right here might have been saving for me or something, having these pawns now doubled. I forget what the exact move is right here, but the main thing is that I just did not like placing my knight in a pin because eventually I'm going to have to move my knight and the rooks are going to be off the board. Maybe bishop back, rook here, and king here. I could throw in a check. Actually, that's not even good because the rook is being defended. So this is the move that could have been played here for white. Just bishop to e1, backing up, and again, this pin is very annoying. So I'm not seeing any good solution in short after rook d6. I throw my knight back to e7, and it's really a sad situation for me right now. Bishop e3 is played, and what I wanted to do is just rook to b3, but that's going to be problematic because of bishop c5. In fact, it's problematic in every variation. This bishop is just really well placed. If I were to play bishop b3, bishop c5 is played. Great coordination between the white pieces, and this knight I think might have to actually run home because there's just so many different pins. There's like 3 different pins I could find myself in. King here, there's rook e6. King here, pick your favorite way to attack the knight. There'd be a pin. Say rook here again. And if I just leave my king sitting here, there's just rook there. You get the idea. This knight is just a lost piece. So this, in short, is a setup that I wanted to avoid. I didn't want white to kind of get this setup in, and really just out of desperation at this point, instead of rook b3, I tried f5, just trying to find some activity for my knight, giving up a pawn. White just takes, doesn't even mess up the pawn structure, and now I try knight g6. If the pawn did take, I was going to try this idea, hitting at both the rook and bishop, but white just keeps everything structurally good. And now I do get this bishop. If the bishop does react, I do get this pawn, and there might be some save. It's still a lot of work, but white doesn't do that. Instead, it's just this pawn gets rolling. I grab that bishop, the pawn recaptures, and I try to get active with my rook, but it's just not working out. I'm trying to get one of those pawns back, being down 2 pawns right now, but there's just no time. Rook d4 just defends. I get behind that passed pawn. There's a check thrown in. King g6, rook b7, king f5, and I'm not even threatening, I don't believe, to even take on f4 because this guy starts rolling, and as soon as I go after him with my rook, then this pawn starts going, and both of them can't be stopped. So king f5 looks like a strong position, but it looks like that I'm threatening to grab on f4, but it's just not even a threat. b6, g5, looking to break up these guys, but now after rook check, king e6, another check, king d7, f5, this is just terrible. There's not really anything that I could do. These pawns are connected. There's a third pawn right here. After rook b5, we just have b7, and it's a sad situation when I'm behind the passed pawn. Ideally, how you would want to be, if your opponent has a passed pawn, get your rook behind that passed pawn, but it still just pushes, and it's immune from capture. Taking at this point just runs into a check. You get the idea. The rooks come off, and this pawn, 1, 2, 3, and game over. So at this point, I'm just seeing no solution whatsoever, and I just resign at this point after white's 48th move, pawn to b7. So thanks again for those of you that took part in this game, and I'm not sure if there's going to be a third. Let me know in the comments section what your thoughts are, and maybe we could kind of go from there. And that's pretty much it. So I hope you got something out of this video, and I'll catch you on the next one. Take care. Bye.